She was 7 months pregnant, holding her 8-month-old daughter when her husband slapped her across the face. She fell. Her belly hit the coffee table. Blood filled her
Consider
mouth.
this your
And
permanent
as she lay on the
residence.
ground, he stood
Neither
over
of you
her
are
and said
leaving.
5 words that would change everything. You are
You
nothing
think this is a
without me.
game?
What
I
Marcus
told you
Whitmore
what would
did not
happen.
know was that someone was
I'm not afraid
recording
of you.
every second. What he did not know was that his wife had been building a case against him for 6 months. And what he definitely did not know was that his father-in-law, the man he had never bothered to meet, was a retired 3-star military general with 35 years of intelligence connections and absolutely nothing to lose. This is the story of a woman who was told she was nothing. A woman who was beaten, isolated, and silenced. A woman who decided that if she was going to escape, she would not just survive. She would destroy the man who tried to destroy her. Stay with me until the end, because this story has more twists than you can imagine. And the ending? Trust me, it is worth the wait. If stories like this move you, if you believe women deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me you are here. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Now let us begin. Snow fell on the Whitmore estate like a blessing the house did not deserve. From the outside, the $12 million mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut looked like something from a holiday card. 15,000 square feet of old money, elegance draped in Christmas lights. A circular driveway lined with perfectly trimmed hedges. Windows glowing warm against the December cold. Inside, Grace Mitchell Whitmore stood in the nursery, her 8-month-old daughter Lily pressed against her shoulder. At 7 months pregnant, every movement required calculation. Every step demanded balance. But Grace had learned to move carefully in this house long before her belly grew heavy with her second child. She was not crying. She was not trembling with fear. She was counting. 3 security cameras in this room alone. 2 exits, 1 blocked by furniture Marcus had positioned there last month. 4 days until Christmas. 47 hours until her window of escape. Her phone buzzed against her hip. She pulled it from the pocket of her cashmere sweater, careful not to wake Lily, and read the message from an unknown number. He just left the plaza with her. 40 minutes. Grace felt nothing, not anymore. The jealousy had burned out of her 2 years ago. The hurt had calcified into something harder, something useful. Now she felt only the cold clarity of a woman who had stopped being a victim 6 months ago and started being an accountant. She opened a hidden app on her phone, one disguised as a meditation timer. Inside were links to 3 separate cloud storage accounts, financial records, screenshots of text messages, medical documentation of accidents that were never accidents. Everything she needed to prove that Marcus Whitmore, beloved tech CEO and philanthropist, was a monster. 3 backups confirmed, evidence secure. Grace pressed her lips to Lily's downy head and whispered words she had repeated every night for 6 months. 3 more days, baby girl. Mommy just needs 3 more days. She crossed to the window, bouncing slightly to keep Lily asleep, and watched the snow accumulate on the lawn. Somewhere out there, beyond the gates and the guards and the invisible walls Marcus had built around her life, freedom waited. She just had to survive long enough to reach it. From the diaper bag hanging on the nursery door, Grace retrieved a burner phone. The cheap prepaid device looked absurd against the hand-painted Italian wallpaper, but it was the most valuable thing she owned. It was the only thing Marcus did not know about. She typed quickly, "Package ready. Christmas morning. Confirm receipt." The reply came within seconds. "Confirmed. Standing by. D. Diana Cole," her best friend from law school. The only person from her old life who had refused to give up on her, even when Grace had pushed everyone away, even when she had believed Marcus's lies about her father, even when she had become someone she no longer recognized. Grace deleted the thread and returned the phone to its hiding place inside a stuffed elephant that played lullabies. Marcus swept for bugs weekly. He checked her phone daily. He monitored her email, tracked her car, and had installed cameras in every room except the bathrooms. But he never checked the diaper bag. He never touched anything to do with the baby. That was his first mistake. The sound of a car in the driveway made Grace tense. She moved to the mirror and practiced the expression she would wear when Marcus walked through the door. Soft smile, grateful eyes. The look of a woman who knew her place. "How was your day, honey? Can I get you anything?" Her reflection showed 2 women. The mask she wore for survival, and underneath it, barely visible, the warrior who was planning a war. The front door opened. Marcus's voice carried up the stairs, loud and confident, already on a phone call about something that mattered more than his family. Grace descended the stairs carefully, one hand on the railing, the other supporting Lily. She found him in the foyer, shaking snow from his cashmere coat, his phone pressed to his ear. Marcus Whitmore was handsome in the way that expensive things are handsome, tailored and polished and designed to impress. At 42, he had the body of a man who employed a personal trainer and the face of a man who had never been told no. His smile could light up a boardroom. His eyes could freeze a heart. He ended his call when he saw Grace and crossed to kiss her cheek. His lips were cold from the winter air. "There's my beautiful wife. And my princess." He tickled Lily's chin, playing the doting father for approximately 12 seconds before checking his watch. "I have calls. Don't wait up." He disappeared into his study, and Grace felt her shoulders drop with relief. Another interaction survived. Another performance completed. 47 more hours of performances, and then she would be free. She carried Lily to the kitchen, where Elena Santos was preparing dinner. Elena was 63 years old, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a bun and hands that had scrubbed floors in wealthy homes for 40 years. She had been the Whitmore housekeeper for 15 of those years, long enough to know the family's secrets, long enough to hate the man who paid her salary. "Your friend called again," Elena whispered, her eyes flicking toward the security camera above the refrigerator. "The house line. I told Mr. Whitmore it was a wrong number." Grace squeezed her hand. "Thank you for everything." Elena's eyes were fierce. "My sister, she did not make it out." "You are going to make it out." This woman, this underpaid immigrant who sent half her paycheck to family in Guatemala, was risking everything to help Grace escape. She had been smuggling information for 6 months, photographing documents, recording conversations, building a case brick by brick while pretending to be invisible. They had never spoken openly about what they were doing. The cameras were always watching. But they had developed a language of glances and gestures, of tasks that took too long, and phones left in convenient places. Elena was the bravest person Grace had ever known. After dinner, after Marcus retreated to his study, after Lily was bathed and fed and sung to sleep, Grace descended to the basement. Behind a stack of boxes labeled Christmas decorations, behind old furniture covered in sheets, there was a corner that the security cameras could not see. Grace had found it 3 years ago, when she was still naive enough to think hiding was the same as escaping. Now it was her war room. She opened the fireproof lockbox hidden inside a broken armoire and reviewed her arsenal. USB drives containing financial records from Marcus's second phone, printed screenshots of his text messages with Victoria Stone, medical records documenting 15 trips to the emergency room in 4 years, each one explained away as a fall, a stumble, an accident. And at the bottom, in a sealed envelope, a letter addressed to General Robert Mitchell. Grace held the envelope in her hands. She had written this letter 6 months ago, when she finally admitted to herself that her father had been right about Marcus from the beginning. She had never sent it. Some combination of shame and fear and stubborn pride had kept her from reaching out to the man she had not spoken to in 2 years. But the letter existed. And if everything went wrong, if Marcus discovered her plan and she had to run with nothing but Lily in her arms, this letter would explain everything. "Dad," she had written, "I was wrong. About everything. About Marcus. About you. I am so sorry I did not listen. I am so sorry I wasted years defending a man who was slowly killing me. By the time you read this, I will either be free or I will be gone. If I am free, I will call you myself. If you are reading this, then something has gone wrong, and I need you to do what you do best. I need you to protect your granddaughter. I need you to destroy the man who hurt me. And I need you to know that even when I was pushing you away, even when I was pretending to be happy, I never stopped loving you. I never stopped being your daughter. Please forgive me for taking so long to come home. Your Gracie." Grace returned the letter to the lockbox and sealed it shut. She allowed herself 30 seconds to feel the weight of what she was about to do. Then she straightened her spine, smoothed her expression, and climbed the stairs to perform the role of Mrs. Marcus Whitmore for 2 more days. 2 more days. She could survive anything for 2 more days. The next morning, December 22nd, Grace executed the first phase of her plan. Marcus left for the office at 7 as he did every morning. He kissed her cheek, reminded her about the Christmas party on the 24th, and told her not to overexert herself in her condition. The moment his car cleared the gate, Grace moved. She had 20 minutes before the nanny arrived. 20 minutes when no one was watching Lily, which meant 20 minutes when no one was watching her. She went to Marcus's study, to the antique desk he had inherited from his grandfather, and opened the hidden drawer she had discovered last month. Inside was his second phone, the one he thought she did not know about, the one he used to communicate with Victoria and manage the offshore accounts he thought were invisible. Grace had 15 minutes. She needed 3. The phone was locked with a 6-digit code. She typed in the date of Marcus's greatest business triumph, the IPO that had made him a billionaire. The phone unlocked. "You think you are so clever," she thought. "But clever men make patterns, and I have been watching your patterns for 4 years." She plugged in the USB drive and began copying files. Bank statements from the Cayman Islands, wire transfers to shell companies in Delaware, text messages that would void their prenuptial agreement by proving Marcus had hidden assets before their wedding, 47 million in offshore accounts, 12 million in cryptocurrency, 6 years of lies, documented and downloadable. When the transfer was complete, Grace returned the phone to its hiding place and retreated to her basement corner. She composed a text on her burner phone. "Got it. Everything. He has been hiding 60 million. Diana's reply came fast. "That voids the prenup. You are free. Get out now." Grace hesitated. Her fingers hovered over the keys. "Tomorrow, after I get Lily's passport from his safe." The passport was the final piece. Without it, Marcus could claim she had kidnapped their daughter if she tried to leave the country. Without it, she would be trapped in a custody battle that his money would win. She needed that passport. Tomorrow, she typed, "I will be free tomorrow." She had no idea that Marcus was already checking the security footage from his office. She had no idea that his face was already twisting with rage as he watched her open his desk drawer. She had no idea that her carefully constructed plan was already crumbling. By tonight, everything would change. By tonight, the monster would take off his mask, and Grace would learn that the only thing more dangerous than a powerful man was a powerful man who felt threatened. 4 years earlier, Grace Mitchell had been someone else entirely. She sat in the library of Columbia Law School, surrounded by case files and cold coffee, preparing for finals with the intensity of a woman who had something to prove. At 26, she was top of her class, editor of the Law Review, and 6 months away from joining one of the most prestigious firms in Manhattan. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Dinner this weekend? Miss you, Gracie." She smiled and typed back, "Sorry, Dad. Drowning in torts." Next month? General Robert Mitchell had raised his daughter alone after her mother died when Grace was 7. He had taught her to shoot, to fish, to read military strategy, like other children read fairy tales. He had been strict, but never cruel, demanding but always proud. He had also been overprotective in ways that had chafed against Grace's independence since she turned 18. He vetted her boyfriends like they were security risks. He ran background checks on her roommates. He once flew across the country because she mentioned in passing that a professor had made her uncomfortable. Grace loved her father, but by the time she reached law school, she was desperate to make decisions without his input, desperate to prove she could take care of herself. Which is why, when she met Marcus Whitmore at a charity gala that spring, she did not tell her father about him for 3 months. Marcus was charming in a way Grace had never encountered. The men in her life had been soldiers and academics, gruff and serious. Marcus was playful. He made her laugh. He asked about her dreams and remembered her answers. He sent flowers after every date and planned surprises that showed he was paying attention. For a woman who had spent her life being analyzed and assessed, being simply adored felt revolutionary. They dated for a year before Marcus proposed. Grace said yes without hesitation. She was so in love, so certain that she had found her person, that she brushed aside the small concerns that occasionally surfaced. The way Marcus dismissed her opinions when they disagreed. The way he always chose the restaurant, the movie, the vacation destination. The way he smiled when she deferred to him and frowned when she did not. These were minor things, she told herself. Every relationship required compromise. She was 27 when she told her father about the engagement. She had expected resistance. She had not expected war. General Mitchell flew to New York the next day. He sat Grace down in her tiny apartment and laid a folder on the table between them. I had him investigated, he said. His voice was calm, controlled, the way it always was when he was about to deliver bad news. He has a pattern, Gracie, 3 previous girlfriends. All of them successful, independent women. All of them ended up isolated from their families and friends. All of them signed NDAs after the relationships ended. Grace felt her cheeks flush with anger. You had no right. I had every right. I am your father. I am an adult. I make my own decisions. The general pushed the folder toward her. Read it, please. But Grace did not read it. She was too angry, too defensive, too determined to prove that she knew better than the man who had controlled every aspect of her life for 26 years. The charm is the mask, her father said, his voice heavy with something that might have been grief. The control comes later. I have seen men like him before, Gracie. I have interrogated them. I know what they are capable of. Grace stood up. She was shaking with fury. You interrogated enemy combatants. Marcus is my fiancé. He is not a threat. I hope you are right, her father said. But if you are not, I will be here. Always. Grace walked out. She did not speak to her father for 6 months. When she finally called to invite him to the wedding, their conversation was polite and distant, like 2 strangers who happened to share blood. The general came to the wedding. He stood in the back and watched his daughter marry a man he believed was a monster. When Marcus thanked him for coming, the general looked him in the eye and said nothing. Grace told herself her father was just being difficult. She told herself he would come around eventually. She told herself that time would prove she had made the right choice. Now, 4 years later, hiding in a basement from the man she had married, Grace understood that her father had seen the truth from the beginning, and she had been too proud, too stubborn, too desperate to be her own person, to listen. The erosion happened slowly. Year 1, Marcus convinced Grace to take a break from law. You do not need to work, baby. Let me take care of you. She told herself it was romantic. She told herself she could always go back. Year 2, Marcus suggested they combine their finances. Joint accounts are simpler. She told herself it was practical. She did not notice when her name disappeared from the investment accounts. Year 3, Marcus convinced her that her father was toxic. He is so controlling. Maybe some distance would be healthy. She stopped calling home. She stopped visiting. She let herself believe that cutting off her father was her own choice. Year 4, Grace became pregnant. Marcus became attentive in ways that felt suffocating. Stress is not good for the baby. Every opinion she expressed, every decision she tried to make was suddenly a medical risk. She was not allowed to exercise too much, to work at all, to see friends without Marcus present. By the time Lily was born, Grace could not remember the last time she had made a decision without Marcus's approval. The first time he hit her, Lily was 3 months old. Grace had asked a question, just a question. Why was there a woman's name saved in his phone as florist when they already had a florist for the house? Marcus's hand moved so fast she did not see it coming. One moment she was standing in the kitchen. The next moment she was on the floor, her cheek burning, her baby screaming in the nursery down the hall. Marcus stood over her, his face twisted with rage, and said words that would echo in her nightmares for years. You do not question me. You do not investigate me. You do not think without my permission. You are nothing without me. Do you understand? Nothing. Grace understood. In that moment, she understood everything. She understood that her father had been right. She understood that her marriage was a prison. She understood that the man she loved did not exist, had perhaps never existed, had been a performance designed to trap her. But she also understood something else, something that would save her life. She understood that she could not fight back. Not yet. Not with a 3-month-old baby and no money and no support and no proof of what he had done. She understood that the only way to escape was to become invisible, to convince Marcus that he had broken her, to gather evidence in secret, build allies in silence, and wait for the perfect moment to strike. So Grace wiped the blood from her lip, picked up her screaming daughter, and said the words that would keep her alive long enough to plan her escape. I am sorry. It will not happen again. Marcus smiled. The rage drained from his face like water from a tub. He kissed her forehead and told her he loved her. And Grace began counting the days until she could destroy him. 6 months before Christmas, Grace started building her case. Elena was the first ally she recruited. The housekeeper had seen everything over the years, the screaming matches and the suspicious bruises, and the way Grace flinched whenever Marcus raised his voice. She had stayed silent out of fear and necessity. But when Grace approached her with a plan, Elena did not hesitate. "My sister," Elena said, her voice barely a whisper. Her husband, he was like Mr. Whitmore, charming on the outside, a devil behind closed doors. She did not make it out, Mrs. Whitmore. She died in that house with that man, and everyone pretended it was an accident. "I am so sorry," Grace said. Elena's eyes hardened. "I will not let that happen to you. Tell me what you need." What Grace needed was documentation. Every bruise photographed, every financial irregularity recorded, every threat preserved. Elena became her spy. The housekeeper moved through the house like a ghost, photographing documents when Marcus left them out, recording conversations when he thought he was alone, building a dossier of evidence that would eventually bring him down. Diana was the second ally. Grace reconnected with her law school friend through a series of careful maneuvers, calling from burner phones, meeting in locations Marcus would never think to monitor. Diana was a prosecutor now, specializing in domestic violence cases. She knew exactly what kind of evidence would be needed to break Marcus's prenup and win custody of Lily. "The prenup is ironclad," Diana said during one of their secret meetings, "unless you can prove he hid assets." "Can you prove that?" Grace smiled. "I can prove everything." Over the months that followed, Grace transformed herself. Outwardly, she was more submissive than ever, agreeing with Marcus about everything, anticipating his needs, never giving him reason to suspect. Inwardly, she was ice and steel, cataloging every abuse, planning every move, waiting for the perfect moment. The moment came in December when Grace discovered the location of Marcus's second phone, when she realized she could download everything she needed to prove he had hidden $60 million. When Diana confirmed that the evidence would void the prenup and give Grace a chance at freedom. 3 more days, Grace told herself. Get the passport, get out, get free. She had no idea that Marcus was already watching, that her careful plan was already exposed, that the worst night of her life was less than 24 hours away. But even if she had known, she would not have stopped. Because Grace Mitchell Whitmore had spent 4 years being nothing, and she was ready to become everything. December 23rd arrived cold and gray. Grace woke to an empty bed. Marcus had left early for the office, which should have been a relief. Instead, she felt a prickle of unease she could not explain. Something was wrong, something in the air had shifted. She dressed carefully, choosing clothes that would hide her pregnant belly if she needed to move fast. She fed Lily breakfast, singing nursery rhymes while her mind raced through contingency plans. She helped Elena with the preparations for tomorrow's Christmas party. 50 guests expected. Caterers arriving at noon. At 10 o'clock, her burner phone buzzed. Grace retreated to the basement and read Diana's message. "I am suspended, pending investigation." "He knows, Grace. He knows about us. You need to run. Today." Grace's hands began to shake. She forced herself to breathe, to think, to analyze the situation like the lawyer she had once been. How much did Marcus know? How long had he known? What was his next move? She typed back, "I cannot. He has Lily's passport. If I run without it, he can claim kidnapping." Diana's reply was immediate. "Then get the passport and get out. Now, today. Do not wait." Grace climbed the stairs with her heart pounding. The safe was in Marcus's study, behind a painting of his grandfather. She had watched him open it dozens of times, had memorized the combination years ago. But when she entered the study and moved the painting aside, the safe would not open. The combination had been changed. She tried Lily's birthday. Nothing. She tried their anniversary. Nothing. She tried every number she could think of, and the safe remained locked. He knows, she thought. He knows, and he is already one step ahead. Looking for something? Grace spun around. Marcus stood in the doorway of his study, his coat still on, his face arranged in an expression of calm curiosity. But his eyes were not calm. His eyes were ice. "I thought you were at work," Grace managed. "I thought you were being a good wife." Marcus stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Funny how we are both disappointed." He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 documents. Grace recognized them instantly. Lily's passport and her green card renewal papers. "You know what happens if you try to leave?" Marcus asked, his voice soft and reasonable. "You lose your immigration status. I report you for kidnapping. You never see Lily again." "Marcus, please." "And your father?" he continued as if she had not spoken. "That security clearance review I mentioned it started this morning. Any allegations he makes will look like a desperate man trying to protect his pension." He was lying. He had to be lying. Grace's father had served his country for 35 years. His record was spotless. But Marcus had connections. Senator Richard Blake was one of his biggest investors. If anyone could launch a fraudulent investigation into a retired general, it was a sitting United States senator. Marcus held up her green card papers. Then slowly and deliberately, he tore them in half. "I do not know what you and your prosecutor friend were planning," he said. "But it is over now. You are staying right here. Forever." He dropped the torn papers at her feet and walked out. Grace stood frozen in the center of the study, surrounded by the wreckage of her escape plan. Her ally was suspended. Her documents were destroyed. Her father was under investigation. Every path she had planned was blocked. For a long moment, she could not move, could not breathe, could not think beyond the crushing weight of despair. Then Elena appeared in the doorway, her face pale but determined. "Mrs. Whitmore." "Grace, do not give up." Grace looked at her through a haze of tears. "How can I keep fighting? He has won." Elena crossed to her and gripped her hands. "He thinks he has won. That is not the same thing." "What do you mean?" "He thinks you are beaten. That makes him careless." "Careless men make mistakes." Elena's voice dropped to a whisper. "My sister," she tried to leave quietly. She tried to slip away without confrontation. It did not work. Her husband found her every time. "What are you saying?" "I am saying maybe quiet is not the answer. Maybe you need him to do something so terrible that not even his senator friend can protect him." Grace stared at her. "You want me to provoke him? I want you to survive." Elena squeezed her hands. "He hits you when you challenge him, when you question him, when you make him feel small. If you pushed back just once, just enough to make him lose control, and we recorded it." Grace's mind raced. It was dangerous. It was reckless. It could get her killed, but it could also be the evidence she needed. Video proof of Marcus committing assault. Something so clear, so undeniable that no amount of money or connections could explain it away. "If we do this," Grace said slowly, "we need to capture everything. Video with sound, multiple angles if possible, and it needs to go somewhere Marcus cannot reach." Elena nodded. "I have already thought of this. My phone records video. I can hide in the kitchen doorway. He never notices me. And where do we send it?" Grace thought about the letter in her basement, the one addressed to her father, the one she had never sent. "We send it to my father," she said, "and we pray he can forgive me long enough to save me." Grace spent the rest of the day preparing. She played the perfect wife, submissive, apologetic, grateful for Marcus's patience with her illness, her confusion, her irrational fears. She did not challenge him. She did not question him. She made him believe that his threats had worked, that she was broken, that she would never disobey again. By evening, Marcus was relaxed, confident, magnanimous in victory. He poured himself a scotch and told Grace about his plans for the Christmas party, about the guests who would be attending, about the impression they needed to make. "You will wear the blue dress," he instructed. "The one that hides your condition. I do not want people thinking we are one of those couples who cannot stop breeding." "Of course," Grace agreed. "Whatever you want." Marcus smiled. He reached out and patted her cheek, the same cheek he had struck 3 months ago. "That is my good girl." He retreated to his study for a conference call, and Grace began her preparations. She positioned Lily in the playpen near the Christmas tree. She wanted her daughter close, but not in the line of fire. She signaled to Elena, who nodded and retreated to the kitchen with her phone already recording. She checked the time. 9:30. Marcus would be leaving soon to meet Victoria. All Grace had to do was push the right button at the right moment. She was terrified. Her hands were shaking, her heart was racing. Her mind was screaming at her to stop, to submit, to survive another day. But she thought about Lily growing up in this house. Lily learning that this was what love looked like. Lily becoming another woman who mistook control for care. No, not her daughter, never her daughter. At 9:45, Marcus came downstairs in his coat. Going out. Grace took a breath and stepped into his path. Where are you going? Business dinner, Marcus replied, not really looking at her. At 10 p.m., on Christmas Eve? He paused, his eyes focused on her face. Excuse me? This was it, the moment of no return. Is Victoria going to be there? Grace asked. Her voice was steady, even though her insides were liquid. Should I call her florist like you do in your phone? Marcus went very still. What did you say? I know about her, Marcus. I have known for months. The apartment you bought her in Tribeca. The jewelry. The business trips to Miami. His face was changing. The mask was slipping. Underneath was something dark and cold and dangerous. You went through my phone. You are not even going to deny it. Marcus moved fast. He grabbed Lily from the playpen and set her down on the carpet out of the way. Grace felt a moment of relief that her daughter was safe, and then Marcus was spinning back toward her, his hand raised. The slap connected with her cheekbone. The force of it sent her stumbling backward. Her pregnant belly hit the edge of the coffee table. She fell. Pain exploded through her body. Her vision blurred. Blood filled her mouth from where she had bitten her tongue. Marcus stood over her, his face twisted with rage, his mask completely gone. You do not question me, he snarled. You do not investigate me. You do not think without my permission. You are nothing without me. Do you understand? Nothing. Grace lay on the ground, one hand protecting her belly, the other pressed to her bleeding face. She forced the word out through the pain. Yes, yes what? Yes, she whispered, I understand. Marcus smoothed his coat. He ran a hand through his hair. The rage drained from his face, replaced by cold satisfaction. Clean yourself up. You look pathetic. He stepped over her body and walked out the front door. The engine of his car roared to life. The headlights swept across the windows, and then he was gone. In the kitchen doorway, Elena lowered her phone. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. I got it. All of it. Grace pulled herself to a sitting position. Her lip was split. Her ribs ached. Her baby was kicking frantically inside her, responding to her stress. But she was alive, and she had evidence. Send it to 3 cloud accounts, Grace said. The ones I set up, and one more. Elena nodded. Where? Grace wiped blood from her chin. To my father. Send it to my father. At 11:23 that night, General Robert Mitchell sat alone in his study in Virginia. The walls were lined with photographs from his 35 years of service, handshakes with presidents, unit photos from deployments around the world, commendations and medals framed in careful rows. But the photo that held his attention was the one on his desk. His daughter on her wedding day, smiling and white, looking like she had found everything she ever wanted. He had known that smile was a lie. He had tried to warn her. She had not listened. 2 years of silence. 2 years of wondering if she was okay, of checking her social media for signs of trouble, of lying awake at night imagining the worst. He had not stopped watching over her. He had just learned to do it from a distance. His phone buzzed. Email notification from an unknown address. The subject line made his heart stop. Dad, I was wrong. I need you. He opened the email with trembling fingers. There was a video attachment. He pressed play. For 90 seconds, General Robert Mitchell watched his daughter get beaten by her husband. He watched Marcus slap her across the face. He watched her fall, her pregnant belly striking the coffee table. He watched her lie on the ground, bleeding and broken, while Marcus stood over her and told her she was nothing. The video ended. The general sat in absolute stillness. There were no tears. There were no screams of rage. There was only a silence so complete it seemed to swallow the room. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. Colonel Price, I need you at my house in 30 minutes. Full briefing package. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was ice and iron. We are going to war. Christmas Eve morning arrived with the promise of snow. Grace woke to a face she barely recognized. The bruise on her cheek had bloomed into purple and yellow, spreading from her cheekbone to her jaw. Her lip was swollen. There were fingerprint shadows on her upper arm where Marcus had grabbed her. She cataloged the injuries with the clinical detachment of a woman who had learned to document her own destruction. Front angle, side profile, close-up of the split lip. The photos joined the thousands of others in her hidden cloud accounts. Elena appeared in the bedroom doorway with coffee and news. He left early. Will not be back until the party tonight. Grace felt something loosen in her chest. A few hours of breathing room. A chance to think. Your father called the house, Elena continued. 3 times I told him you were resting. Grace closed her eyes. Of course he had called. He had seen the video. He was probably already on his way. Good, she said. I do not want Marcus to know he is coming. Elena's eyes widened. He is coming? When? Tonight. The Christmas party. 200 guests, all of Marcus's business contacts, all of his wealthy friends. And my father is going to walk through that door and show Marcus exactly what happens when you hit a general's daughter. What happens then? Grace opened her makeup kit and began the familiar work of covering her bruises. Then we find out who my husband really is when he cannot hide behind his money. The morning passed in preparation. Grace helped Elena with party details, her mind racing through scenarios and contingencies. She packed a go bag and hid it in Lily's diaper supplies. She transferred emergency cash into the lining of the car seat. She sent encrypted messages to Diana, updating her on everything that had happened. At 2 in the afternoon, Diana called from a burner phone. I am still suspended, but I made some calls. The DA's office has been looking at Marcus for years. Tax evasion, fraud, campaign finance violations. They just never had enough. Grace felt hope kindle in her chest. If my video shows what I say it shows, they will move. I can have a warrant ready by December 26th. You just have to survive 2 more days. Grace hung up with something she had not felt in months. Optimism. A real path forward. Evidence plus investigation, plus her father's connections equaled freedom. 2 more days. She could survive anything for 2 more days. She looked at herself in the mirror. Bruised but unbroken. Beaten but not defeated. The makeup covered the worst of the damage. In the blue dress Marcus had chosen, she almost looked normal. Almost looked like a woman who had not been hit by her husband 16 hours ago. Almost looked like a woman who was not planning the destruction of her entire marriage. 2 more days, she whispered to her reflection. You can do this. At 6 o'clock, Grace descended the stairs in the blue dress and found her nightmare waiting in the foyer. Marcus was home early, and he was not alone. Senator Richard Blake stood beside him, a barrel-chested man in his 60s with a politician's smile and a predator's eyes. Blake was one of Marcus's biggest investors. He was also one of the most powerful men in Washington, with connections that reached into every agency of the federal government. If Blake was here, Grace's plan was in serious danger. There she is, Marcus said, his voice warm with performance. Grace, you remember Senator Blake? Blake's smile widened. Of course. How is that green card renewal coming along? These bureaucratic delays are terrible, but do not worry. I have people working on it. The threat was unmistakable. The senator controlled her immigration status. 1 phone call and Grace could be deported. She forced herself to smile back. Thank you, Senator. That is very kind. Marcus took her arm and guided her toward the kitchen, his grip just tight enough to remind her who was in control. I know your father has been calling, he murmured. I know you sent him something, and I know he is planning to come here tonight. Grace's heart stopped. How could he know? She had been so careful. It is fine, Marcus continued. Let him come. Senator Blake has already made some calls. Your father's security clearance review started this morning. Any allegations he makes will look like a desperate man trying to protect his pension. You are lying, Marcus smiled. Am I? Ask the senator. He has friends in very interesting places. Grace wanted to scream, to run, to burn this house down with everyone inside it. Instead, she smiled and smoothed her dress and said, I should check on the caterers. Marcus released her arm. That is my good girl. The party began at 7. Guests streamed through the door in designer clothes and practiced smiles. Champagne flowed. Christmas music played. The Whitmore estate sparkled with holiday cheer. Grace moved through the crowd like a ghost, making small talk, accepting compliments, playing the role of the perfect hostess. All the while, her eyes kept drifting to the door. Where was her father? Why had he not come? At 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Grace's heart leaped. Finally. But it was not General Mitchell at the door. It was a process server. Grace Whitmore, you have been served. The envelope contained emergency custody papers, filed by Marcus that morning, claiming Grace was mentally unstable and a danger to her children. A hearing was scheduled for December 26th, the same day Diana had promised the warrant. Marcus had outmaneuvered her again. She found him across the room, surrounded by investors laughing at someone's joke. When his eyes met hers, his smile widened. "Did you really think you could win against me?" he mouthed. Grace retreated to the bathroom and locked the door. She sat on the edge of the tub, custody papers crumpling in her fist, and fought the urge to vomit. Everything was lost. Her father's help would be discredited. The DA could not move fast enough. She would lose her children in 2 days. A knock on the door made her jump. "Grace?" It was Victoria Stone's voice, syrupy with fake concern. "Are you all right in there?" Grace did not answer. She was too busy trying to remember how to breathe. "I heard about your little fall last night," Vicky continued. "Clumsy of you. You should be more careful. Pregnant women have accidents all the time." The door handle rattled. Grace did not move. After the custody hearing, Marcus is filing for divorce. "I will be moving in by New Year. Your children will call me Mommy. And you will be deported back to nowhere." Grace stared at the custody papers, at her hands, at the future she could not escape. Then her phone buzzed in her clutch. Unknown number. She answered without hope. "I am outside the gate. They will not let me in." Her father's voice, calm and steady, and more beautiful than any sound she had ever heard. "But I am not leaving," General Mitchell continued. "I am never leaving. Now tell me everything, sweetheart, from the beginning." Grace started to cry. The tears she had held back for hours, for months, for years finally broke free. "Dad, I do not know if we can win. Sweetheart, I spent 35 years winning wars that looked unwinnable. This man has money and connections. I have something better. What? I have you. And I have time. And I have a plan he cannot see coming." Grace wiped her face with the back of her hand. "What do I do? Go back to that party. Let him think he has won. Can you do that for me?" She thought about Lily sleeping upstairs, about the baby growing inside her, about the future she refused to surrender. "Yes, sir. That is my girl. Now listen carefully." Christmas morning arrived with pale sunlight and the scent of pine. Grace woke before dawn, her mind racing with everything her father had told her during their bathroom phone call. The general had not been idle. While Grace was trapped at the party, he had been assembling an army. Colonel Sarah Price, military JAG lawyer and longtime friend, had spent the night tracking down 3 other women Marcus had abused and silenced with NDAs. All 3 were willing to testify if subpoenaed. One had medical records, one had photographs, one had recordings. Agent Michael Webb, former FBI and now private intelligence, had traced Senator Blake's financial relationship with Marcus. Wire transfers, campaign violations, leverage. Diana Cole, suspended but not stopped, had connected with the other victims and was building a pattern of abuse case that no custody judge could ignore. "The hearing is December 26th, her father had said. "We cannot stop it, but we can change what happens there." Marcus was expecting character assassination. He was prepared for Grace to look crazy, vindictive, desperate. He was not prepared for evidence. At 6 in the morning, Grace slipped out of the house while Marcus slept off champagne and met her father at a diner 20 miles away. General Robert Mitchell looked older than she remembered. His hair had gone fully gray in the 2 years since she had seen him. There were new lines around his eyes, new weight on his shoulders, but his spine was still military straight. His gaze was still sharp. And when he stood to embrace her, his arms were still the safest place she had ever known. "Daddy," Grace whispered into his shoulder, "I am so sorry." No, his voice was firm but gentle. You do not apologize for surviving. You do not apologize for anything that monster put you through. He held her at arm's length and studied her face, his jaw tightening at the makeup-covered bruises. I watched the video, he said. I watched my daughter get hit by her husband. I watched her fall. I watched her lie on the ground and beg. Do you know what I felt? Grace shook her head. Rage, the general said. More rage than I have ever felt in my life. I have seen men die. I have killed enemies of this country. But I have never wanted to destroy another human being the way I want to destroy Marcus Whitmore. Dad, but I will not do it with my hands. That would be too quick, too merciful. He smiled, and there was something cold and satisfied in the expression. I am going to destroy him with evidence and procedure and the full weight of American law. I am going to take everything he has, his money, his reputation, his freedom. And when he is sitting in a prison cell, alone and forgotten, I want him to know that a woman he thought was nothing took it all away. Grace felt tears streaming down her face. I do not know if I can do this. You have already done it, sweetheart. You built the case, you gathered the evidence. You survived 4 years in that house and came out fighting. All I am doing is providing backup. He opened a folder and spread documents across the table. Here was what they were facing. Here was the plan. The custody hearing was in 2 days. Marcus's lawyers would argue that Grace was unstable, paranoid, prone to delusions. They would present testimony from doctors he had bribed and friends he had coached. But Colonel Price had already filed emergency motions to introduce Elena's video as evidence. Agent Webb had delivered a package to Senator Blake's chief of staff that would make the senator too busy to protect Marcus. Diana had prepared the other victims to testify. The key, the general explained, is that narcissists cannot handle losing control. Marcus expects you to fight like a victim. He expects tears and accusations and desperation. He does not expect calm, documented evidence from multiple sources. What if it is not enough? Then we escalate. The FBI has been investigating Whitmore Technologies for 3 years. They just need someone willing to testify. Grace stared at him. You want me to help take down my husband's company? I want you to be free. I want Lily to be safe. And I want that man to pay for every bruise he ever put on your body. He paused. Is that enough motivation? Grace thought about the life she had lived for 4 years. The fear, the isolation, the slow erosion of everything she used to be. Yes, she said, that is enough. Grace returned home to find Marcus awake and suspicious. Where were you? Church, she lied smoothly. Christmas morning service. I wanted to pray for our family. Marcus studied her face for signs of deception. Grace kept her expression serene, her body language submissive. You should have told me, he finally said. I would have come with you. I did not want to wake you. You worked so hard on the party. The suspicion faded. Marcus kissed her forehead. That is very thoughtful. Go check on Lily. I have calls to make. Grace spent the day playing the perfect wife, her mind racing beneath the performance. At noon, her father's prediction came true. Marcus received a phone call that drained the color from his face. What do you mean he withdrew support? Blake promised. Grace watched from the kitchen doorway as Marcus paced, his voice rising with panic. When he caught her looking, his expression shifted from fear to suspicion to rage. What did you do? Grace widened her eyes. I do not know what you are talking about. Your father, he did something. Marcus stopped, controlled himself. The mask slid back into place. It does not matter. The hearing is tomorrow. I have the best lawyers. You have nothing. Grace said nothing. She just smiled. For the first time since her wedding day, she had the advantage, and she was going to use it. At 4 o'clock on Christmas afternoon, Marcus made his move. Grace was in the nursery, rocking Lily to sleep, when she heard sirens in the distance. They grew louder, closer, until red and blue lights flashed across the nursery windows. She carried Lily downstairs to find 2 police officers in her foyer, Marcus standing beside them with an expression of profound concern. Officers, thank God you are here. I have been so worried about her. Grace's blood went cold. What is happening? Mrs. Whitmore, one officer said, we received a report that you are a danger to yourself and your children. We need you to come with us for evaluation. That is a lie. Grace stepped back. Lily clutched against her chest. He is lying. He hit me 2 days ago. Look at my face. She gestured at the fading bruises, but the makeup she had so carefully applied that morning covered the worst of the damage. The officers exchanged glances. Ma'am, we are not here to determine fault. We have a psychiatric hold order signed by a licensed physician. Marcus moved forward, his voice dripping with fake sorrow. She has been making accusations like this for weeks. It is part of her condition. Please, just get her the help she needs. Grace's mind raced. She knew what this was. A 5150 hold. Involuntary psychiatric commitment for up to 72 hours. In some states, it required only one person's statement of concern. Marcus had found a doctor willing to sign the papers. Probably bribed him, just like he bribed everyone else. This is wrong, Grace said, her voice shaking. He is trying to stop me from testifying tomorrow. The officers looked uncomfortable, but they did not waver. Ma'am, you need to come with us. If everything is fine, you will be released within 72 hours. 72 hours. The custody hearing was in 36. Marcus had outmaneuvered her again. At least let me call my lawyer, Grace pleaded. You can make calls from the facility, the officer said. But we need to go now, Marcus reached for Lily. I will take care of her, Grace. Do not worry. Grace held her daughter tighter. No, you cannot take her from me. The officer stepped forward. Ma'am, please do not make this harder than it needs to be. Grace looked at Elena, who had appeared in the hallway with her phone barely visible in her hand, recording everything. She looked at Marcus, whose concerned mask could not quite hide the triumph in his eyes. She looked at Lily, her beautiful daughter, who was starting to cry because she could feel her mother's terror. And Grace made a choice. She handed Lily to Elena, not to Marcus, to the woman who had risked everything to help her. Take care of her, Grace said, her voice breaking, until I come back. I will, Elena promised. I will not let anything happen to her. The officers took Grace's arms, gently but firmly. They walked her to the patrol car in the driveway, past the Christmas decorations, past the snow-covered lawn, past the life she had built and lost. In the doorway, Marcus waved goodbye. I will take good care of her, Grace. Do not worry about a thing. The car door closed. The sirens faded. And Grace was taken away from her children on Christmas Day. The psychiatric facility was cold and white and designed to make people feel small. Grace was processed like a criminal. Clothes taken, personal items confiscated, phone seized. She was given a paper gown and paper slippers and led to a room with bare walls and a bed bolted to the floor. A doctor came to evaluate her. Middle-aged man, soft hands, eyes that would not meet hers. Mrs. Whitmore, do you know why you are here? Because my husband filed a false report, Grace said. She forced herself to stay calm, to sound rational. He has been abusing me for years. I have evidence. I have witnesses. The custody hearing is tomorrow, and he is trying to prevent me from testifying. The doctor made notes. Your husband says you have been making these accusations for months. He says you have been paranoid, delusional. He is lying. He says you have been suffering from postpartum psychosis, that you have threatened to harm yourself and your children. Grace felt despair rising in her throat. That is not true. None of that is true. The patient is agitated, the doctor murmured. Writing, showing signs of persecutory delusion. Recommend extended observation. No, Grace reached for his arm, then stopped herself. Touching him would only confirm their narrative again. Please, you have to listen. My daughter needs me. The hearing is tomorrow. The doctor stood. Get some rest, Mrs. Whitmore. We will talk again in the morning. He left. The door locked behind him. Grace was alone. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the bare white walls. She thought about Lily, probably crying for her right now. She thought about her unborn son growing inside her while his mother sat in a psychiatric ward. She thought about Marcus, sleeping peacefully in their bed, confident that he had won. She thought about giving up. What was the point of fighting? Marcus had money, connections, power. Every time she found a path forward, he blocked it. Every time she thought she was close to freedom, he pulled her back. Maybe she was crazy. Maybe all of this was delusion. Maybe she should just accept her fate and stop struggling. The thought lasted exactly 30 seconds. Then Grace remembered her father's voice on the phone. I have you, and I have time, and I have a plan he cannot see coming. She remembered Elena's promise. I will not let anything happen to her. She remembered Diana's determination. The DA has been looking at Marcus for years. They just never had enough. Grace was not alone. She had people fighting for her, people who believed her, people who were not going to let Marcus win. She wiped her eyes and straightened her spine. I am not crazy, she said out loud. I am not weak. I am a mother. And I am getting out of here. She began to plan. December 26th, the day of the custody hearing. General Robert Mitchell had not slept in 36 hours. From the moment he learned his daughter had been committed, he had been working every contact, calling every favor, building a case that would get her released in time to fight for her children. Colonel Price filed emergency motions challenging the psychiatric hold. She presented evidence that Marcus had made false statements on the commitment papers. She demanded a hearing before any judge who would listen. Agent Webb traced wire transfers from Marcus to the psychiatrist who had signed Grace's hold order. Bribery, a federal crime. Diana Cole contacted the hospital administrator directly. She explained in calm and professional terms that by noon, every news outlet in Connecticut would have the story of how Whitmore Technologies' CEO committed his pregnant wife to silence her abuse testimony. The administrator was not pleased. The administrator reviewed the paperwork. The administrator discovered several irregularities that required immediate attention. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Grace Mitchell Whitmore was released from psychiatric custody. Her father was waiting outside. Grace ran to him. The hug was fierce and desperate, the embrace of a woman who had spent the darkest night of her life alone. Daddy, I have got you. The general held her tight. I have got you. It is almost over. The hearing, what time? 2 hours. Colonel Price has everything. The other women are testifying. The judge has seen the video. Grace pulled back. What video? The night he hit you. Elena got everything. The judge watched it this morning. Grace felt her knees go weak. Her father caught her. Marcus's lawyers are trying to negotiate a settlement, he said. But we are not taking a settlement. We are taking everything. Greenwich Family Court was not designed for drama. The building was functional and institutional, all beige walls and fluorescent lights. But today, drama found it anyway. Grace entered the courtroom on her father's arm. She was wearing borrowed clothes, her hair still damp from a quick shower at a nearby hotel. She looked exhausted, overwhelmed, barely holding herself together. Exactly what Marcus expected to see. But underneath the exhaustion, something was different. There was steel in her spine, fire in her eyes. Grace Mitchell had stopped being a victim. Marcus was already seated with his legal team when they arrived. 4 lawyers in expensive suits, papers spread across the table. The posture of men who expected to win. When Marcus saw the general, his face went pale. They had never met. In 4 years of marriage, Marcus had made sure of that. He had told Grace that her father was toxic, controlling, dangerous. He had convinced her to cut off contact. Now, for the first time, he was face to face with the man he had been hiding from. General Mitchell approached with his hand extended. Marcus, finally, I do not believe we have been properly introduced. Marcus did not take the hand. You should have stayed out of this, old man. The general smiled. Old man, interesting. The last person who called me that was a warlord in Afghanistan. He is dead now. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that only Marcus could hear. You put your hands on my daughter, my pregnant daughter, while she was holding my granddaughter. I have spent 35 years building a network of people who can make problems disappear. You are a problem, and this is me being merciful, letting a courtroom decide your fate instead of handling it myself. Marcus's composure cracked. Is that a threat? It is a fact. Threats require uncertainty. There is nothing uncertain about what is coming for you. The general straightened and smiled. See you inside. The hearing began at 11. Marcus's lawyers presented their case first. They argued that Grace was unstable, paranoid, suffering from postpartum psychosis. They submitted testimony from the psychiatrist who had signed her commitment papers. They painted a picture of a troubled woman who needed help, not custody. Then Colonel Price stood up. Your Honor, I would like to submit evidence that contradicts the petitioner's narrative. She played Elena's video. The courtroom went silent as the footage filled the screen. Marcus slapping Grace, Grace falling. Marcus standing over her, screaming that she was nothing. When the video ended, Marcus's lead lawyer was already on his feet. "Your Honor, this video was obtained without consent. It should be inadmissible." The judge, a gray-haired woman with reading glasses and no patience for games, looked at him over her frames. In cases involving domestic violence, Connecticut law permits recording without consent if the recording party reasonably believes it documents a crime. Denied. Colonel Price continued. She submitted medical records documenting 15 emergency room visits in 4 years, all attributed to falls or accidents. She introduced testimony from 3 other women Marcus had abused and silenced with NDAs. She presented wire transfer records showing that Marcus had paid the psychiatrist $50,000 to sign the commitment papers. By the time she finished, Marcus's legal team was in chaos. They objected to everything. They demanded continuances. They threatened appeals. The judge denied every motion. "I have seen enough," she said. "Mr. Whitmore, you fabricated a mental health crisis to silence a witness. You committed assault on video. You have a documented pattern of domestic abuse spanning 15 years. She removed her reading glasses and looked directly at Marcus. "Emergency custody is hereby granted to Grace Mitchell. A restraining order is in effect immediately. You are not to contact your wife or children. Criminal charges will be recommended to the district attorney." She banged her gavel. "This court is adjourned." Grace burst into tears. Her father's arm came around her shoulder. "It is over," he said. "You won." Across the room, Marcus was being escorted out by his lawyers. He caught Grace's eye as he passed. "This is not finished," he mouthed. Grace straightened her spine and looked him dead in the eye. "Yes," she said, "it is." For 12 hours, Grace believed she was free. She collected Lily from Elena's protective care. She settled into her father's Virginia estate. She held her as daughter and cried in and let herself imagine a future without fear. Then, at 10 o'clock that night, her phone rang. Unknown number. "Congratulations, Grace. You won the battle. But you just lost the war." Victoria Stone's voice, cold and triumphant. "What are you talking about?" "Turn on the TV." Grace walked to the living room where her father was watching the news with a glass of whiskey. The screen showed a press conference in progress. Marcus at a podium, lawyers behind him, the Whitmore Technologies logo on the backdrop. "I am the victim of a coordinated attack by my wife's family." Marcus's voice was measured, sorrowful, convincing. Her father, General Robert Mitchell, has used his government connections to manufacture evidence, pressure witnesses, and manipulate the courts. I have filed a federal lawsuit against him for abuse of power. Grace felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. "He is going to drag this out for years," she said. "He is going to claim you abused your power. He is going to make us the villains." Her father muted the television. "Let him try, Dad. He has lawyers, money, media contacts. He can spin this until no one knows what is true anymore." General Mitchell set down his whiskey. "Sweetheart, he can spin all he wants. The truth is on video. The witnesses are on record. But," he held up a hand, "and by tomorrow morning, he is going to have much bigger problems than public relations." Grace stared at him. "What do you mean?" "The FBI has been investigating Whitmore Technologies for 3 years. Tax evasion, wire fraud, campaign finance violations. They have been building a case, but they never had enough to move." He smiled. "They have enough now. How? Because you are going to testify. You have access to financial records they have been trying to get for years. You know where the bodies are buried. And unlike his executives, who are all implicated, you are a victim willing to cooperate." Grace felt something shift inside her. A door opening, a path forward. "You want me to help take down his entire company. I want you to be free, truly free, not just legally separated, but safe. And the only way to be safe is to make sure Marcus Whitmore never has the power to hurt anyone again." Grace thought about the last 4 years, the isolation, the fear, the way Marcus had convinced her that she was nothing. She thought about Lily, who would grow up knowing her father was a monster. She thought about the other women, the ones Marcus had hurt before her, the ones he would hurt after if he remained powerful. "What do I need to do?" she asked. Her father handed her a phone. First, you make a call. The FBI raid on Whitmore Technologies happened on January 3rd. Grace watched it on television, Lily in her arms, as federal agents in blue windbreakers carried boxes of evidence out of the Manhattan headquarters. Executives were arrested. Files were seized. The company's stock dropped 40% before the markets closed. By the end of the day, Marcus was in custody. The charges were extensive. Wire fraud, 15 counts. Tax evasion, 8 counts. Domestic assault, 3 counts, because 2 of the other women had found the courage to press charges once they saw Grace fight back. Bail was denied. Flight risk. History of witness intimidation. Senator Blake was next. The evidence Agent Webb had gathered was devastating. Campaign finance violations, conspiracy, bribery. The senator resigned before he could be expelled, and the federal investigation that followed ended his political career forever. Victoria Stone tried to claim spousal privilege when she was called to testify. You are not married to him, the prosecutor pointed out. Vicky was charged as an accessory to fraud. All of Marcus's gifts, the apartment, the jewelry, the car, were seized as proceeds of criminal activity. Grace watched each domino fall with a satisfaction she had not known she was capable of feeling. She was not proud of the pleasure she took in their destruction. She knew it was not healthy to find joy in other people's suffering, even when those people had caused her so much pain. But she allowed herself this, just this once, just for a moment. They had tried to destroy her. They had failed. She had destroyed them instead. Before Vicky was taken away in handcuffs, Grace asked for a moment alone with her. They stood in a courthouse hallway, 2 women who had loved the same man and been broken by him in different ways. You told me my children would call you Mommy, Grace said. You told me I was nothing. Vicky's eyes were red from crying. Her designer clothes were wrinkled. The confident woman who had tormented Grace at the Christmas party was gone. He told me you were crazy, Vicky said. He told me you trapped him. He told me... Grace cut her off. He told you what you wanted to hear, just like he told me. She stepped closer. The difference is I woke up. I stopped believing his lies. I stopped letting him control my reality. She looked Vicky in the eye. You never will. Grace turned and walked away. She did not look back. There was nothing left to say. 6 weeks later, on Valentine's Day, the final pieces fell into place. Marcus Whitmore pleaded guilty to avoid trial. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and his lawyers had finally convinced him that fighting would only make things worse. The sentence was 18 years in federal prison. No parole eligibility for 12 years. All his assets were seized and liquidated. $47 million in restitution was ordered. A permanent restraining order prohibited him from contacting Grace or their children until the children were 18 and chose to allow it. His name was removed from the company he had built. Whitmore Technologies was renamed, restructured, and sold to a competitor. Marcus Whitmore ceased to exist. Senator Richard Blake received 18 months in minimum security prison, 3 years probation, and a $2.4 million fine. His wife filed for divorce. His pension was revoked. His political legacy became a cautionary tale that no one wanted to remember. Dr. William Price, the psychiatrist who had signed Grace's commitment papers for $50,000, had his medical license permanently revoked. He was sentenced to 6 months of house arrest and ordered to pay $150,000 in fines. His photograph was used in medical ethics training under the title, What Not to Do. Victoria Stone completed her community service and probation in silence. She lost her career, her reputation, and every material possession Marcus had given her. She took a job at a DMV in New Jersey. Fluorescent lights, gray uniform, an endless line of people who needed forms processed. One day, a customer recognized her. Hey, are you not that woman from the Whitmore case? Vicky stared at her computer screen and said nothing. The line kept moving. Elena Santos received $250,000 from Grace's divorce settlement. She used it to open a small cafe in Queens called Elena's Kitchen. The walls were decorated with photographs, including one prominent frame showing Elena with Grace, Lily, and baby Robert. A small plaque beneath it read, "For the woman who saw everything and refused to look away." Elena served coffee to her customers and laughed with her regulars and lived the peaceful life she had earned through decades of courage. Diana Cole was fully reinstated at the DA's office. All charges were dropped. She was promoted to head of the Domestic Violence Prosecution Unit. Her first major case after returning was a hedge fund manager who had abused his wife for 7 years. Diana won the conviction. Grace sat in the gallery and watched her friend deliver the closing argument. When the verdict came in, their eyes met across the courtroom. No words were needed. General Robert Mitchell sold his Virginia estate and bought a house 10 minutes from Grace's new home in Connecticut. He took up the role of full-time grandfather with the same dedication he had once brought to military service. He took Lily fishing. He taught her to play chess. He read to baby Robert every night before bed. His security clearance was reviewed and cleared. His record remained unblemished. His reputation, if anything, was enhanced by the story of how he had helped his daughter escape an abusive marriage. At Sunday dinners, he said grace before the meal. He always ended the same way. "And thank you for bringing my daughter home." Lily would add, "And thank you for Grandpa." Everyone would laugh. The table was always full. Grace Mitchell, no longer Whitmore, built a new life from the wreckage of the old. She finalized her divorce and received full custody of both children. A $15 million settlement was placed in trust for Lily and Robert. She returned to law, specializing in domestic abuse cases. She worked alongside Diana at the DA's office, helping women escape the same traps she had survived. Her first client was a young woman named Sarah, whose husband controlled her finances, monitored her phone, and would never hurt her. Until he did. Grace took the case for free. She recognized herself in Sarah's eyes. The same fear, the same shame, the same desperate hope that someone would believe her. "I believe you," Grace said, "and I am going to help you get out." She moved into a 4-bedroom colonial in Connecticut. Warm, bright, no security cameras, no locked doors. She legally changed her name back to Grace Mitchell. The name Whitmore no longer existed in her vocabulary. She learned to sleep without nightmares, to laugh without flinching, to trust without waiting for betrayal. It took time. It took therapy. It took more strength than she knew she had. But she did it, because Grace Mitchell was not nothing. She never had been. Valentine's Day morning arrived with February sunlight streaming through curtains. Grace woke to the sound of small feet running down the hall. A moment later, Lily burst through the bedroom door. "Mommy, Grandpa is making pancakes." Grace smiled and stretched and felt for the 1,000th time the miracle of waking up without fear. "Tell him I will be right down." Lily bounced out. Grace could hear her shouting the message to the general, who responded with mock indignation that his pancakes would get cold. She picked up 9-month-old Robert from his crib and carried him downstairs. The house smelled like coffee and maple syrup. General Mitchell stood at the stove in an apron that read "World's Okayest Cook," a gift from Lily that he wore with genuine pride. "Morning, sweetheart." He flipped a pancake with practiced ease. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in years." She settled Robert into his high chair and poured herself a cup of coffee. Lily was already at the table, attacking a stack of pancakes with the enthusiasm of a 3-year-old who had discovered syrup. "Mommy, why is today special?" Grace smiled. "It is Valentine's Day. It is about love." Lily considered this with the seriousness of a philosopher. "Like how Grandpa loves us?" "Exactly like that." The doorbell rang. Grace went to answer it. Diana stood on the porch with flowers and a bottle of champagne. "Happy Valentine's Day." "I thought we could celebrate." "Celebrate what?" Diana's smile widened. The Marcus Whitmore verdict was upheld on appeal this morning. All 18 years, no possibility of early release. Grace felt something release in her chest, a tension she had not even realized she was carrying. Good. She did not say more. She did not need to. Diana came inside and joined them for breakfast, the kitchen filled with laughter and conversation and the comfortable chaos of family. After the dishes were cleared, Grace stood at the window and watched Lily play in the backyard. Her father was chasing her through the February snow, moving slower than he used to but still willing to try. Diana came to stand beside her. "You did it," she said. "You really did it." Grace thought about the woman she had been 4 years ago, trapped, isolated, convinced she was nothing. She thought about the woman she had become, strong, free, surrounded by people who loved her. "I did not do it alone." "No, but you started it. You built the case, you gathered the evidence, You survived. Diana squeezed her hand. That matters, Grace. That matters more than anything. That evening, after Lily was in bed and Robert was sleeping peacefully, Grace sat down at her desk. She was working on Sarah's case, building the evidence file, documenting the pattern of abuse, preparing for the custody hearing that would free another woman from another monster. But first, she opened her journal. She had started keeping it 6 months ago on the advice of her therapist, a place to process her thoughts, to track her healing, to remember how far she had come. She wrote the date, February 14th. Then she wrote, "He thought when he hit me, he was teaching me who was in charge. He did not know he was teaching me who I needed to become. Every bruise was a lesson. Every threat was a brick in my escape plan. Every time he told me I was nothing, I was quietly becoming everything he feared. I used to dream about being saved. Now I know the truth. The only person who could save me was me. And the only thing stronger than a man who thinks he is untouchable is a woman who has nothing left to lose." She closed the journal and looked around her office. On the wall hung her law degree, retrieved from storage after 4 years. Beside it was a photograph of her mother, who had died when Grace was 7. "You would be proud of me, Mom," she whispered. "I think you would be so proud." She turned off the desk lamp and went to check on her children. Lily was sleeping peacefully, one arm wrapped around a stuffed elephant that had once hidden a burner phone. Robert was breathing softly in his crib, too young to understand any of what had happened, too young to remember the chaos of his first months of life. He would grow up safe. They both would. That was what mattered, and that was what all of it had been for. Grace leaned down and kissed each of them on the forehead. "Sleep well, my loves. Mommy is here. Mommy is always going to be here." She walked downstairs where her father was reading in the living room. "You should get some rest," she said. "I will. Just wanted to make sure everyone was settled." He looked up at her, and she saw everything in his eyes. The fear he had carried for years, the rage he had channeled into action, the love that had never wavered, even when she pushed him away. "Thank you," Grace said, "for not giving up on me. Never." His voice was rough with emotion. "Not ever." She bent down and hugged him. This man who had spent his life protecting others, who had finally gotten the chance to protect her. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, Gracie. More than you will ever know." Later that night, Grace stood at her bedroom window and watched the stars. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the darkness she had survived, the light she had found. She thought about all the women who were still trapped, the Sarahs of the world, still believing they deserved the pain, still hoping it would get better, still waiting for someone to save them. She would help as many of them as she could. That was her purpose now. That was what her suffering had prepared her for. But tonight she allowed herself to simply be grateful. Grateful for her children, sleeping safely down the hall. Grateful for her father, reading in the living room. Grateful for Diana and Elena and Colonel Price, and everyone else who had believed her when believing was hard. Grateful for herself, for the strength she had discovered, for the woman she had become. Tomorrow she would return to battle. She would fight for Sarah. She would fight for every woman who needed a champion. But tonight she was at peace. Grace Mitchell closed her eyes and breathed in the cold February air. She was not nothing, she never had been. And now, finally, she knew it. 5 years later, Grace Mitchell stood at a podium in Washington, D.C. The room was filled with lawmakers, advocates, and survivors. Cameras flashed. Microphones captured every word. She was testifying before Congress in support of expanded protections for domestic violence victims. "When I was trapped in my marriage," she said, "I believed I was alone. I believed no one would help me. I believed I was nothing." She paused, letting the words settle. "I was wrong. I had a father who never stopped loving me, even when I pushed him away. I had a friend who risked her career to help me escape. I had a housekeeper who recorded the evidence that saved my life." She looked out at the audience. "I was lucky. I had resources, connections, people who could fight for me. But most women do not have that. Most women are trapped with no money, no support, no way out. And every year, thousands of them die because we have not done enough to protect them." Her voice strengthened. "I am here today to ask you to change that, to fund shelters, to strengthen laws, to make it easier for victims to escape and harder for abusers to control. I am here because I survived, and I owe it to every woman who did not survive to make sure her death was not in vain. She stepped back from the microphone. The room erupted in applause. Somewhere in the audience, General Robert Mitchell wiped his eyes. Somewhere in Connecticut, Lily and Robert watched their mother on television and felt proud without fully understanding why. Somewhere in a federal prison, Marcus Whitmore sat in a cell and stared at the wall. And somewhere in homes across America, women who had believed they were nothing heard Grace Mitchell's words and felt something stir. Hope, possibility, the first step toward freedom. Grace walked out of the Capitol building into the spring sunshine. Diana was waiting for her. "Nice speech," she said. Grace smiled. "I had good material." They walked together toward the car, two women who had survived and built something meaningful from the wreckage. "What is next?" Diana asked. Grace thought about it. "Everything," she said. "Everything is next." And for the first time in her life, she believed it.